Isn't that lovely? That is Dexibell's USA Platinum piano sample that you just heard. Platinum is their top of the line piano samples, and it used to be in the past with their previous flagship piano, which was the Dexibell Vivo S9, that you could put one platinum piano on there, and basically you probably have to remove a lot of stuff to make room for that. That is no longer the case with the new top of the line flagship model, the Dexibell S10 and the Dexibell S10L. Basically, you can put two platinum pianos in here without really having to delete a lot of things. In fact, there are two that come already prepackaged in here. And just like Nord, you can actually go onto Dexibell's website and choose new stuff that they're continuously updating their database with. New sounds, piano, electric piano, synthesizer, whatever category you're in, you can download those and put them on your piano here. That is so cool that you can update the sounds. And not only can you just update the sounds, but you can also put SoundFont 2 files on here. How cool is that? SoundFont 2 files have been around for a long, long time. And basically, you can find those anywhere on the internet and add them to your Dexibell. And on top of that, you can use something like a free program like Polyphony and create your own samples and put them on here. How cool is that? So let's get started. Now, I've got two pianos here, the Dexibell S10 and the S10L. Now, let me go over the differences first. The S10 is the latest and greatest and their current flagship in the Dexibell line. This has wooden keys or wood hybrid keys. It's actually the Fatar TP400W. Now, this was also in their S9 model, but the TP400W was built specifically for the S9. It was the first of its kind, and it was all to Dexibell specifications. And it was such a cool keyboard feel that Studio Logic actually put that same keyboard action, the Fatar TP40W, into their Numa X Piano GT, which also is one of the best feeling keyboard key actions out there. And here it is back again in the S10. Now, in the S10, that key action also has aftertouch, which is really cool. And it's really needed for a lot of things that you're going to do that require aftertouch. Now, the S10L, L being light, it's a lighter version of the S10. The S10L has Fatar's TP8 action in it. And while it's a great action for a 76 key keyboard, it does not have aftertouch. And I gotta tell you, when you have something like this that plays piano and is specifically focused to play piano, you would think that the action would not be good for things like synthesizer or organ. And you'd be wrong, because when you switch over to the synthesizer samples or to the organ engine here, it changes the key action altogether, and it feels more like it should feel for an organ or a synthesizer. And it's the same kind of thing that Nord has done with their keyboards. So yes, it is really good at reproducing key actions for the pianist or the organist or the synth player. That is so cool. Now, a lot of manufacturers, when they offer a 70X type keyboard, some offer 73 keys, some 71, some 76. I like the 76. It's only 12 notes less or 1 octave less than a full 88. Let me just go over the differences with you real quick between the S10 and the S10L, besides the key action that I just described. If you look over here on the S10, you've got some quick access buttons over here that you don't have on the S10L. And granted, you can take the S10L and go into the menus and program the same things for like freeze and enhancer into the programmable buttons here, assign 1 and assign 2. So it's not that the capabilities are different. The capabilities are identical. It's just that you have some quick access buttons here that you don't have. And let me just demonstrate what those are. You may not use these all the time. You may not use these at all. But basically, there's a freeze function. So let's say I'm playing a chord and I hit freeze. That freezes that chord into memory. So anytime I play a single note, I'm playing that chord. Here it is in D, D sharp, E. So you can do. There's a lot of things you can do with that, but I'm just giving you a quick example. It's a cool way to get some complicated stuff done very easily. And the freeze will continue to remain in that freeze mode until you change it to a different chord or turn it off. And the other one is enhancer. So let me go over to like strings, okay? And let me just play you something. Sounds really nice, right? Let's go ahead and enable the enhancer. Listen to it now. Without. And with. I don't know how they did that, but it is really something, and I would definitely use that in one of my compositions because it just really takes things to the next level at a subtle pace. And the other thing that's different between the S10 and S10L, it's probably not significant, but the power button is lit on the S10 and it's not on the S10L. The next bit of difference is when you get to the effects section, they both have the same capabilities and all that, but when it comes to the knobs here, C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6, they are lit and they are encoders. So when you go from one selection to another, everything snaps into place, showing you with the LEDs what the proper position is. When you go to the S10, you don't have that. They're not lit. Also on the S10, you have an octave key and a sound library key. And again, the S10L can also do that, but it's just not a quick access button on the front panel. And the octave key, when you're having a split, let's say, you've got piano here, and maybe you have flute over here and bass here. Well, flute is not actually played in this range. It's probably up here. But since you're splitting the keyboard, you want piano up here, you want bass down here. The flute, since it's down here, you want to move it up a couple of octaves so that it sounds in the range that a flute should sound in. That's what the octave button is for, to move that up an octave or 2 or 3 or whatever to make you feel comfortable with where it's playing in that range. Very cool stuff. Easy access button on the S10, programmable on the S10L with a menu. And the other major thing here, which really doesn't appear to be major, but it's really such a simple concept, is the pitch and modulation wheels here. Also programmable, but mainly used with pitch and modulation. They are slanted here on the S10, and they're straight on the S10L like they are on most keyboards. Most keyboards, they are straight, and you can get away with that on a 76-key keyboard. But when it comes to an 88-key keyboard, if they were not slanted, I'm reaching over here to use that. But since they're slanted, I'm at a much more comfortable level right here with my arm and my fingers to have control of that. It's a well thought out thing, and even though it's such a simple concept, it really does help a lot. And as I said, the S10 has aftertouch, the S10L does not. There's a lot of times where you really don't need aftertouch. In fact, it would hinder you to have that in certain situations. So there is a switch right here on the front panel to turn aftertouch on or off. Well thought out. Metal cabinets and wood side panels. Now, something very unique to Dexibell that no other manufacturer does. They have 320 oscillators for their sound engines. And that is so cool, which when I say 320 oscillators, it sounds like I'm rattling off some kind of spec that maybe you don't understand. But what that basically boils down to is unlimited polyphony. That is so cool. No other manufacturer really has that. Now, polyphony is the number of notes that can be played at once. And when you hold the pedal, you're actually holding those notes too while you're playing new notes. So let me give you an example. There's pianos out there with 48 key polyphony, 96, 192, 256, 192 and 256 note polyphony is actually really good. But then they have 384, 512, and piano manufacturers boast about that 192 or 256, as they should. But unlimited polyphony, man, that really takes the cake. So for those that don't understand the whole polyphony thing, let me go over that right now, and you'll understand what this is all about. Polyphony is basically how many notes the sound engine can produce at a single time. Let's say, for simplicity's sake, we've got 100 notes of polyphony. Okay? Now, when you're playing piano, most piano sounds are 2 notes of polyphony because they're stereo. You've got a left and a right. So when I play C, well, let me go to the piano actually. When I play C, you're hearing it come out of your left and right speaker. It's 2 different sounds, a left and a right for that note. Okay? So if I'm playing a chord, which is 4 fingers in each hand, okay, that's 8 notes, but since they're stereo, that's 16 notes of polyphony. If I hold down the pedal, it's holding down those 16 notes, plus the pedal also takes 1 note of polyphony, so that's 17 right there. So while I'm playing this, 17 notes, and I add another chord, another 16 notes, and I'm still holding the pedal, we're up to 33 notes. And another, that's 48. So right here, okay, what you have is 16 times 4 chords that I played, 64, plus the pedal, 65 notes of polyphony. And if I add more, while I hold the pedal, of course, I'm going to start running out of notes that the sound engine can make. So what sound engines do at that point is they steal the first notes that are being played and held. They turn those off to make room for the new notes that you're playing. That's how polyphony works. Obviously, the more the better. And of course, if you're layering sounds, right now, this is 17 notes of polyphony right here, okay? You got 16 plus the pedal. And if I also have a layer, that I'm playing a second sound layered here with all the same notes that I'm playing. So now we've got 33. You can quickly see how we're going to run out of room if you have something like 100 notes. 192 notes is excellent. 256 is pretty much the standard in the upper. 192 and 256 are both standard in the upper, higher priced pianos out there. Anything more than that, that's gravy. But 250, but unlimited polyphony, you don't have to worry about anything. And that's what's so cool about Dexibell. The other thing that they do that's so cool, besides that unlimited polyphony, is their sound samples. Now, most pianos that you play, you're going to play a note, and it's going to hold it. And however long that sample is, 3 to 5 seconds, they're going to loop that so that it keeps playing. And in some cases, you're going to hear that loop where it ends and where it starts again. With Dexibell in the lower notes, they're holding it for as long as 15 seconds. So you don't really need to loop it, even though it can if it's over 15 seconds. And the other sound samples also being played for a longer time, not just 3 to 5 seconds. It makes a big difference when it comes to sounding authentic. And Dexibell has nailed that. There is a third thing that Dexibell has done that most other manufacturers have not. The USB port. If you take another keyboard that does not have MIDI outputs, the legacy 5-pin DIN, where you can plug the output of that into the MIDI input of this, most modern keyboards now, especially the less expensive ones, have USB out, so you can hook it up to your computer, and your computer is the host. Not anymore. You can hook that up directly into the USB input of a Dexibell and play whatever sound you want. That is so cool. So when you're doing that, there is no need to bring a laptop or any other computer with you. You're all set. All right, so let's get into a little bit of specs and then we'll go on from there. The S10 weighs 44.12 pounds, and basically it's a Fatar TP400W action, as I mentioned. Same as the Studio Logic Numa X Piano GT, and it has aftertouch. The dimensions are basically 50 inches by 13.83 by 5.12 inches high. On the S10L, that weighs significantly less, obviously. It doesn't have the wood hybrid keys, and it's smaller. So it comes in weighing at 26.5 pounds. It's 4.81 inches high by 44.43 inches long and 12.83 inches deep. And even though it doesn't have aftertouch and it doesn't have those quick access buttons, the difference in weight has me considering which one of these two boards that I would keep or buy for myself between the two. And I'm actually leaning towards the S10L because I just love Dexibell, what they've done, what you can do with it. And even though I love 88 keys, I like this board so much I would consider going out gigging with it, and I would not want to gig with an 88 key. I would keep that in the studio because in the studio, I have to have 88 keys. I have to have a touch like you have here. But to have the sounds and capabilities in a gig that you have here, I would consider that. So I've got a decision ahead of myself which way I want to go personally. Now, like I said, the S9 was the previous flagship model for Dexibell. Here's the differences between the S9 and the S10, and of course the S10L. Improvements from the S9 include 3.2 gigabytes of memory, which is twice the amount of memory that you had in the S9. Can hold 2 platinum pianos, whereas the first one, the S9, could barely hold 1. I mean, it could, but you had to delete a lot of sounds to make room for that. As an example, this one, the S10 right here, I've got two Platinum sounds right here. They're already in here. I've got the Platinum USA and I've got the Japan. Japan, I believe, is Yamaha, and the Platinum USA, I'm not sure. I believe that's a Steinway. But it doesn't have to be those two. You can have the Steinway and Fazioli, which is the Italian sample, or the Japan, which is Yamaha, and Italian, whatever you want. But you can change those too. The S10 series also has new electric pianos, and it has four outputs. You've got two balanced and two unbalanced. And what's really cool about it is you can actually route things like, let's say you've got the organ and you want to route that to the second set of outputs. You can use those to go to your own Leslie on stage where the other two are going to the front of house. Or you can get creative and do whatever you want with those. But that's really cool to have routable outputs like that. And that's where the unbalanced outputs can be used as the sub outs in that case. Also, in the S10 and S10L, you have an enhanced T2L. T2L is Dexibell's true to life, and that's where you go through the menus and shape the sound exactly the way you want it to be shaped. So, in addition to sampled pianos, you've got modeling to help you create the sound according to string resonance, pedal noise, all kinds of things. So, it really helps. And it's not just for the pianos. They do that for just about every sound on here. You can hit T2L, get to that T2L menu, and shape the sound. The choices in the menu for shaping are specific to whatever instrument you're playing. We'll get into some of those a little bit later. And many of the synth sounds are also now in T2L where they weren't before. Now, the hardware is 4 times faster than the hardware in the S9 was. You also have faster memory and faster loading speeds. And you also have 3 sound effects per part as opposed to 2. So now you have 12 sound effects as opposed to 8. 3 for every sound as opposed to 2 for every sound in the S9. Now, here's the best thing about all these improvements that you're getting in the S10 over the S9. The very best thing, even though this is vastly improved and well worth it at even a lot higher price, it's the same exact price as the S9. That is so cool. I don't know how they managed to come up with all these updates and improvements and keep the price the same, but they did. So if you're actually looking for a used S9 and think you're going to save a couple $100, great, you will. You'll save a couple $100. But if you go to the S10 for the exact same price as a brand new S9, you've got so much more for you. So at a glance, you've got advanced T2L monitoring. You got 24-bit 48 kilohertz recording, 32-bit float, 3.2 gigabytes of memory, 180 sounds, including up to 3 platinum sounds. I know I said 2 before. You can, in certain instances, depending on which platinum sounds you're choosing, have as much as 3 in there. 12 independent sound effects, 3 per part. Assignable multi-outputs, Bluetooth MIDI and audio, an Xmure Arranger app, which unfortunately is iOS only. If you're an Android guy like me, you kind of lose out. But if you have an iOS device, you get a little bit more. And get this. Well, you have things like Casio comes with a 1-year warranty, and if you register within the first 30 days, they give you 3 years. That's really cool. Viscount, which also, and with their Legend 70s, way up there in price, just like this, they only give you 1 year of warranty. That's it. With Dexibell, you sitting down? 5 years. 5 years of warranty. That's how sure they are about their products. That is so cool. Now, here's the thing. When you're using USB and you hook that up to your computer to interface with your DAW, you get MIDI, of course, back and forth. You also get audio, but here's the deal. If you're using an Apple device like a Mac, you've got audio that can happen back and forth between the computer and your keyboard. Unfortunately, with Windows, and this has nothing to do with Dexibell, this happens to do with everything, all devices. When you're with Windows, you can only do MIDI back and forth. They have not implemented back and forth audio between a keyboard and Windows. Not sure why they're behind on that, but that is not Dexibell's fault. That is a limitation of Windows. All right, now Dexibell had 3 really, really excellent top-of-the-line keyboards specifically geared to certain things. Their S7 was specifically geared for piano. I mean, it did all kinds of other things, but they excelled at piano. And now they're coming out with the S8. S8 is an improved version of the S7. They also had 2 other top-of-the-line keyboards, and one of those was the Classico L3, which gave you classical organs, and the other was the Combo J7, giving you digital organs and tone wheel / transistor organs. All 3 of those models were top of their class, and all 3 were about $2,500 a piece. So when you take all 3 boards, if you bought all 3, you're paying about $7,500. All 3 of those are built into here. How cool is that? And you're paying $3,999. That is so cool. Just one more thing that makes this unique. I don't know of any other keyboard except for maybe that inexpensive Behringer, the Motor 49, I believe they call it. And it's not, it's a controller. This has motorized faders. Motorized faders. So these faders not only serve as your organ drawbars, they're multifunctional. At the flip of a switch or a press of a button, you can switch this to your mixer. So you have different volumes for each of the 4 parts that you have here. You can control the reverb of each of the 4 parts. You can press it again, and now you have control of MIDI. So if you're using up to 4 different external keyboards or sound modules, you have control of those here with the faders. You can also hit the switch again, and now you've got EQ. So you can control a 4-band EQ of everything too. The nice thing about that, even though you have these 4 different functions for these, whenever you press a button to go to mixer or MIDI control or EQ or organ drawbars, it remembers each of those places for these faders, and it snaps right. So let's look at this. If I go to MIDI control, it goes down here. If I go to mixer, it's where I was. If I go to EQ, that's where the latest EQ that I had. And if I go to organ tone wheel, this is where I'm at for the organ tone wheel. So 4 different functions for these drawbars, and it can remember everything. Furthermore, on top of that, as though that wasn't enough, you can save the whole thing and mark it Joe's Bar or Hilton Reseda or Marriott Ballroom. In other words, whatever you have these set, when you go to a gig and you've got everything perfectly set to the way you want it, you can save it. So the next time you go to that same location, that same gig place, you can just recall that, and it brings up those settings. You don't even have to think about it. You set it once, you save it, you forget about it. Till the next time you go there, you just recall it. You're all set. That alone is really worth something. Now, as far as playing back, it can play back stuff. You can play back WAV, AIFF, or MP3 format files. And as far as the recorder, it's 48 kilohertz, 32-bit float. Now, what it comes with the continuous controller damper pedal. Let me show you. This is a really nice pedal. Unlike those cheap plastic on-off switch boxes that you get with some of the other brands, you get this. And it has this rubber thing that comes out where your foot is here and you play the pedal here. That helps from sliding all over the place. And it works pretty well. Truthfully, I like my method better, which works with any pedal, by the way, is instead of playing like this, turn it sideways. Now you're playing like this. That pedal isn't going anywhere. Just Chuck's little tip here. It also comes with, I don't have it here, but it's an acrylic see-through, basically music rest that hooks onto here. And since it's see-through, it's really cool because if you have something like a little cell phone here that helps you see the notes or remember what the next song is in the set list or whatever, you're not blocking the audience's view of you playing. You're just that small little area where you have that cell phone set up. That's one of the things. Same thing with if you have a tablet on there, but also if you use it as a music rest. It is solid. If you're using it as a music rest, that music is not going anywhere. It is solid. It's staying put. Whereas other keyboards, you're playing and the thing is slowly vibrating off of the music stand. Now, for the T2L engine, as I mentioned before, it has double the memory. It has the higher CPU speed, separate outs, so that you can route like the organ to a separate left and right sub output to go through your own Leslie on the stage, and the rest can go to the front of house or whatever. 3 effects per part, there's 4 parts, plus master EQ and master reverb. And I say master because it applies to the whole board. And, like I mentioned, there's 4 internal zones and 4 external zones. So basically, you're controlling up to 8 different sounds or instruments here just by having the 4 onboard sounds here and 4 external sounds. And you have control, complete control of those external sounds with these faders here. You just press the button to go to the external faders, and now you're controlling those. And you can set those up to send whatever MIDI commands you want to your external devices. So you've got a true master MIDI controller here. And like I said, it's SoundFont 2 compatible, which is really cool. You can even create your own sounds with a free program. And Mac OS supports MIDI and audio, whereas Windows just supports MIDI. Now, let's go over the back panel real quick. And let's do so from your left to your right. So we've got the DC input. It's a 24-volt DC from your AC adapter. You got 1/4 inch left and right outputs, and that can be the main outputs or the sub outputs. Then you have the left and right XLR balanced main outputs, and balanced is really cool because you can take a longer cable, even though you're using XLR instead of 1/4 inch to make it so. But basically, that's a grounded cable, and you can go a lot farther than the recommended 10 feet for 1/4 inch. Then you've got the damper pedal, which is half damping capable, and it comes with it. Then you've got an assignable pedal 1, which is basically a foot switch, and you can use that to go from one thing to another, which is really cool. The second pedal is basically an expression pedal, and you can assign that to do expression like organ. You can bring the volume in and out. And this one's really cool. Assignable pedal 3 is for morphing. Basically, you take an expression pedal and hook it up to morphing that input, and you can do such cool, incredible stuff with that. I won't get into that right now, but I will show you that later on in this video. That is really cool. Then you've got your standard MIDI in, out, and through. Then you've got your USB, which is audio and MIDI to computer. And the audio portion only works if you're on a Mac. 1/8 inch TRS audio input, and 1/8 inch and 1/4 inch headphone jacks. So you're covered. If you have a headphone jack that's only 1/8 inch or another that's only 1/4 inch, either way you're covered. You don't have to look for an adapter like I've done in so many cases so that I can plug my own headphones into my own keyboard. Okay, so we've been talking a lot before this. Now let's actually hear some of the sounds. And since this is so good for piano, let's start out with doing some piano samples. Now the first thing I've got is the USA Platinum, and let's see. You already know what that sounds like because I played that at the beginning. And basically that was with no reverb. Let's give it some reverb. That sounds nice there. I mean, I can go all the way up to like a cathedral, but let's say right about here is good. I love how it sounds at that reverb level. So, and actually, whenever you move it, you can see that it changes the display to show you what the reverb levels are on all four parts. Now, speaking of parts, you'll see you've got main, coupled, lower, and pedal. And basically, you got main right now I'm using for the piano. All right, so now let's go to the next piano. Actually, let's just hit this so that you can see all the ones there. USA Live. Okay, that's a little bit different. Okay, and that's at the reverb level that I set this at. So that sounds pretty good. Let's look at the next one, USA Classic Platinum. Okay. And the next one, USA Bright. Okay. And the next one, and then there's a couple others, but let's go over to the Japan Platinum, which I believe is a Yamaha. And the next one is a live one. Oh man, I could play that all day. I love that song, but I have to go on. A Japan Classic. Then we got a Japan Bright. And basically that gives you an idea of what the Platinum pianos sound like. There are others, but these are really, really cool. So let's get into some of the other sounds. And if you can see on this part of the board over here, you've got sound/memory. We're going to get into just the sounds for now. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 categories. It's 8 basically categories plus a user category, which you can store your own sounds in. So we just did the piano category. Let's go on to the E piano or electric piano category. And when we go to the electric piano category, we'll see that there is a, it says E piano page 1. Let's go up there again. If I go to the right, we have a page 2. And if I go to that EP, whoops, yeah, it only stays up for a little while. If I go to EP Tremolo, for example, go to plucked percussive, and let's choose something like a marimba. Very cool. Now let's go to tone wheel. When I go to organ tone wheel here, that activates the whole organ section over here. So when you play around with it, you can get it to exactly the way you want. And that was close, but not perfect. If I spent a little bit more time with it, I would get that sound perfect. And if we go to Farfisa, the familiar, you hear that every baseball game or whatever. And if we go to VX, cool. But again, with organs, you got to spend some time setting it up to get the sound exactly the way you want it to sound. And you definitely got that here. Then you got the pipe organ, and for that, I want a little bit more reverb. And something like that. So now let's switch it over to strings. And let's try the fast orchestra. Oh, that is so inviting. I love it. And if we go to analog brass, listen to this. And while you can get away with that, there's other things that you can do, like in the synth section, to also reproduce the same thing. There's a number of ways to get to the same thing, but sounding different every time. And if we go to horns, you might remember that. That sounds pretty good. And again, you can go to different instruments and play it differently. Let's go to guitar bass, which is also pretty cool. And the first one that comes up there is a nylon guitar, which is also pretty good. It sounds so good. And if we go to the next one, the power guitar. You recognize that too. Sounds great. And let's try going to number 6, rock slap bass. And there's a page 3 here. There's an upright bass. I love upright basses. Let me see what I can do with that. Now, here's another thing. They have this thing called memory, which is like Korg's Combi or Roland's Scenes or whatever. But basically, they have preset sounds, which are combinations of sounds with other sounds and settings and so on and so forth. And one of these things is, let's go over to 6.3. K. Emerson, that's Keith Emerson. You remember that. And if we go up to 6.6, the Vox. And I've tried this one before, but it sounds better here using a pipe board. And if we go up to 7.3. And lastly, that I wanted to demonstrate, if we go up to 8.7, Lucky Leads synth. This is Keith Emerson when he does Lucky Man. It's so cool. That's the exact sound that he uses. That I love. All right, so now that we've demoed the keyboard and all that kind of stuff, let's go over briefly the, we already know what the pitch bend and modulation wheel do, but you can assign those to do other things as well. We've already gone over the motorized faders. They can be used for the mixer, MIDI control, EQ, or tone wheels. And then we have morphing. I haven't touched into morphing yet, but basically I have an expression pedal hooked up into the morph input. So let's get into tone wheel organ mode first. Here's how that works. When the pedal is towards you, that is your from parameter, and when you push it down, that is your to parameter. So I'm going to go into tone wheel, and I'm going to hold morphing down to get to the morphing menu, and I have it set for pedal. That's my morphing pedal. And I'm going to set it up so that basically I have every other one going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, just for demonstration purposes. That's my from. Then we're going to go to 2, and we're going to have that do the opposite. Okay? Now, when I go to morphing, you can see that they switch. Okay, so now when I play and I use my pedal, check this out. That is just so cool. But, I mean, this is just for demonstration purposes, but you would actually set this up for whatever the from and to values you want to. And again, that is so cool to be able to do that. And the other thing, I mean, all of this is self-explanatory in the organ section, the vibrato type, off and on, the type, and the types are basically, you got C1 and V2 and C2 and V3 and C3 and so on and so forth. But basically, C1 and V1 through C3 and V3. You got overdrive, also self-explanatory, vibrato type, vibrato and chorus. You can choose the type and you can turn it off or on. The percussion, you've got soft, fast, and thirds, and on and off. Rotary, you can have it fast or slow, and you can turn on the brake to slow it down to nothing. And then the tone wheel assign for pedal, lower, and main. Let me just go over this pedal, lower, main, all this stuff right here. On this side, you've got main. Let's go to piano. You got main, coupled, lower, and pedal. All right. Now, main is your main sound. And coupled, I don't like this terminology, so I'm going to rename this to a terminology you're more familiar with. Let's just choose A, B, C, D. Okay? So main is A. B is your next sound, your coupled sound. And let's say you want strings for that. Here's a fast orchestra. And you have control of the volumes of that. Control of the piano, control of the strings, okay, and lower, let's call that C, and let's choose like, I don't know, some kind of strings, no, let's choose a pad, a warm pad. Now, look at this. If I turn down the first two, A and B, see, I've got control of the whole keyboard with all three of these. They're layered. If I turn on the fourth one called pedal, I'm just going to call it D. And let's pick another sound, like let's go to the brass synth, and just for purposes of demonstration, let's just choose a bell. Okay, so now I've got very rich sounding 4 sounds, A, B, C, D. They're calling it main, coupled, lower, and pedal. Now, the lower and pedal can be, layered with A and B, so you have C and D. We're calling that C and D. But we can change that by holding this down, and we can change the split point, okay? Right now it's C4, but whatever I press becomes the new split point. Let's just keep it at C4. All right, now split is off. If I turn it on, now C and D are to the left of the split point, where everything else is to the right. So that's really cool. The C and D part can be either layered with everything else, all 88 keys, or in the case of the S10L, 76 keys. Or you can just have it where the split point is set and it's layered upon itself below the split point. Everything else is above. Now, also, if you go to the master keyboard zone, A, B, C, D, it's the same kind of thing, but it's controlling external keyboards labeled A, B, C, and D. Okay, so basically you've got control of 8. Now, this whole thing, I know the nomenclature is a little bit confusing. That's why I like to call it A, B, C, D. Now, let's turn this all off. I go to main, which is a piano. And I've got the mixer over here for my faders. All right. A equates to this first fader on the right, the volume. And if I go to B and pick like a pad, all right, I've got the volume of that B right here and the volume of A here. So now I have control of A, which is my piano, and B and C, which is my strings. So I got control of all three. If I add a fourth one, it's the same thing over here. And the next ones next to that, those control the reverb of all four. So A, I've got the piano, the amount of reverb for the piano, and the next one, the amount of reverb for that, and so on and so forth. That is so cool. And whatever you put this on, again, that's the mixer setting. It's going to remember that. So if we go to EQ by pressing all of these, and I want a little bit more treble and a little bit more bass, I go back to mixer. It remembers what I had. And I go back to EQ, it remembers what I had. Same thing with MIDI control, and if everything's off, these are the drawbars for the organ. Very, 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 very cool. And for T2L, like I said, if you're on piano, you go to T2L, you can control all kinds of stuff like hammer noise, key off noise, damper noise, string resonance, damper resonance, velocity. Oh, that's another one. Let me show you this. Okay, we're going to go to the menu. Okay, we're going to go to setting, and we're going to go down to keyboard touch. This is really cool. All right, so you can set it. I've got set for light. You can set it to light, normal, heavy, heavy plus, and fixed. Fixed means whether you're playing hard or soft, it's going to be the same volume. All right, heavy plus, heavy plus, normal, light plus. So here's light plus. Not much of an effort, right? We go the other end to heavy. I have to play a lot louder. So whatever you're more comfortable with, I kind of like it at normal to light. But here's where it gets better. There's this velocity key here. You press that, and now you can create your own velocity map for the keys. How cool is that? So you've got these predetermined points here. Whatever point you pick, you can go ahead and change that so that you can create your own velocity here. You like it lighter at the middle, you like it harder on the top, so whatever you like, you can change that. That is so cool. I have not seen that on any other keyboard. And then there's the regular menu. You got the settings I showed you, the T2L editor, and the parameters change no matter what sound you're on. And then there's effects, and you can change all kinds of stuff. The effects for all of these. And when you get into those, the type, you can change the type here, reverb, delay, tremolo, compressor, and vibrato, phaser, flanger, all that kind of stuff. It's all changeable here. The rate, the intensity, all that. So that's getting into a little bit more than I wanted to get into today, but basically this thing is so powerful. The sounds are so good. I love it. And what you can do with this is so cool. Anyway, I have barely scratched the surface on this. There's so many things I wanted to get into. If I go into record, I can go ahead and record stuff. And when I'm done recording it, I can play it back and overlay it or overdub with other things. And when I'm done with that, it'll play back those two while I add a third. And when I play back those three, I can add a fourth, and so on and so forth. It will not degrade in sound because this is not tape. This is digital. So you can have as many overdubs as you want, which is so cool. This can act as a scratch pad for you. So anyway, I barely scratched the surface on this. I just wanted to give you basically a quick overview of what it sounds like, what you can do with this, and it is just so cool. And again, for the price between the S9 and the S10, you would think there would be a lot more money, just like Nord did when they went from the stage 3 to the stage 4. They kept the price the same and gave you so much more. How cool is that? I don't know any other manufacturer that does that. Anyway, if you want a really awesome price on this, contact me. Go to my website, www.pianomanchuck.com. Give me your zip code in the mainland USA. I'll get you a great price on this. And then meanwhile, I hope you learned something from this. I really love demoing these things. Thank you so much for watching, Piano Man Chuck. Peace out. Thanks for watching.